Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday on a Thursday, Bayou Blitz family. That's right. Once again, your Bayou Blitz has shown the power to shift the time and space continuum. So we are coming to you live on a Thursday night, saving you folks the torture of watching Sean Payton's mess of a Denver Bronco team take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Anyway, on that note, I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me, also with the power to shift the space and time continuum, is Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy Wednesday on a Thursday.
Yeah, what is this back? Is this back-to-back weeks? 2 out of the last 3 that we end up doing on a Thursday. I think it's 2 of the last 3, something like that. We like to use our powers for good and not evil. And
speak for yourself, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. I like to use our powers of changing the space-time continuum for good, not evil. But I mean, we actually have some interest. Like, I don't want to say completely different vibe, completely different anything, but the conversations you and I were having on this show last week, this conversation we were having on PSF last week, you don't want to say that those conversations are completely gone.
Nope.
But anytime you have a win, a shutout victory on the road, and you put up 30 points for the third time in the last 21 games, I got that right? So, I mean, that definitely gives you a newfound hope. But what's the old saying, Bob? It's the hope that kills you.
Yep.
It's the hope that kills you. So
hope is just another 4-letter word.
Yeah, and we like 4-letter words on this show.
Yes, we do.
Sometimes we let them slip a lot too. I'll say that's more on the right side of your screen, depending on how you're viewing. But
guilty as charged. Once again, powers for evil, not good.
Right. I digress, though. So I guess let's jump right into it. Saints go up to Foxborough last week. I'll say it again for what's probably the 5th or 6th time. Did not expect, if you asked me back in March, before the schedule came out, I think the Saints are going to play that game in Foxborough early in the season. Be like, hell no, they're not. Same with the game at Lambeau. So the Saints definitely lucked out. Got both those games. Not in putrid freezing temperatures. And I mean, they set the tone from right out the gate, right? The defense sets the tone. Honey Badger gets the pick 6 and gets the Saints on the board. And yeah, I wouldn't say the offense was humming by any means, Bob. But the car actually turned over this week. You know, you didn't sit in your driveway going, I really hope it starts. I'm late for work. It actually cranked. Now, you might have rolled down a hill to get to work, but at least it cranked. And we did see some positive signs, right? Yep. Kamara was involved heavily. Love that. 80 rushing yards. Finally breaks the touchdown record. We'll get into that. Kendre Miller had some flashes. And Alvin Kamara spoke very highly of him this week as well. Love to see that. The Olave injury scare, he played. Numbers weren't really there. Got the touchdown. That helped in fantasy for some people, me included. Michael Thomas, you kind of know what you're getting at this point. Really consistent. You look at the numbers week in and week out, and you're like, all right, we know what we're getting out of Michael Thomas. I think probably the best, and you're more of the tape guy than me, so you can go back and say, hey, wait a minute, I watched the tape back 17 times this week already, Brendan. But the offensive line, probably the best game they've put together, start to finish all year. A lot of positives offensively. So before we jump into the defense, let's, I guess, talk about that. Offensively, this is a team that, again, not humming, might be sputtering, but at least the engine cranked this week. Bob, what were your biggest takeaways from the victory up in Foxborough?
My biggest positive takeaways were the backfield duo, the backfield tandem of Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. I expected Kamara to get a lot of touches again. It's similar to what he did last week against Tampa Bay. Pete Carmichael is using Alvin. Now, Alvin got a lot more inside runs this week than I prefer to see going forward. You want a guy like Kamara in space, used more as a receiver. But we kind of saw almost a reversal of what we got from Alvin Kamara early in his career. When Alvin was used as the guy in space, the change of pace, the receiver, and Mark Ingram was leaned on for the heavy rushing yards. We saw a reversal of that with Kamara being leaned on as the main rusher, and Kendre Miller being used as the change of pace and the receiver. And listen, I love Alvin Kamara. I love what he means to this offense. If you ever had any doubt of that, go back and look at the film of the shovel pass to Foster Moreau for the touchdown. Derek Carr was in the shotgun. Alvin Kamara was in the what they used to call the sidecar off of his right hand shoulder. At the snap, Kamara goes off to the right, and essentially the entire Patriots defense follows him. That allowed Moreau, coming in from the other side, pretty much a clean path in front of Carr to take that shovel pass and take it into the end zone. That's what Alvin Kamara means to this offense and against opponents, even when he doesn't have the football. But man, I was impressed with Kendre Miller. Alvin got my offensive player of the game. There's no question about it. But I was really confused at the timing of the release of Tony Jones Jr. And you and I talked about that a lot on the PSF pregame. It wasn't as if Tony Jones ever brought a dynamic element to this offense. I mean, far from it. But he was used in short yardage. Tony was. He was used, in obvious passing situations, not for his receiving ability, but his ability to pick up the blitz. And that's where I was concerned coming into this game, because I expected New England to blitz. And matter of fact, one of the 2 sacks they got on Carr was directly the result of a defensive back blitz. Obviously, the coaches felt comfortable enough with Kendre Miller to, we know that Kendre has some receiving ability. We saw that in training camp. But they felt confident enough in Kendre Miller's ability to pick up the blitz and Alvin Kamara's ability to pick up yardage in short yardage situations. And both of those things panned out. And say what you will, and I'll agree, the New England Patriots are an awful football team. And they were missing some defensive starters. But they are still still have solid defensive personnel and one of the better defensive-minded coaches that have ever existed in the NFL. And the Saints were able to push the Patriots around and essentially dictate the pace of the game. Now, the offensive line, I was, like you, I was impressed with the offensive line initially. But when I went back and watched the film the second time, and then again for the third time, I can see what people are saying. The people that have been down on Trevor Penning's run blocking. Pass blocking, I thought he has been the best pass blocker on this line in the last 2 ball games. But run blocking now, Trevor seems to struggle a little bit. He seems to hesitate firing off the line of scrimmage. We know he has the physical capability. We have seen that since day one. And as a result, Trevor Penning has not taken first team snaps with this offense, which is an indicator that perhaps that the Saints are going to go with Andrews Pete at left guard and James Hurst back at left tackle. Now, stay tuned. We still have another day of practice tomorrow and a walkthrough on Saturday. Before the starting lineups are, of course, announced on Sunday. But I noticed that most of Kamara's rushing yards came over the right side. That's behind a now healthy Cesar Ruiz and Ryan Ramczyk, who is playing much, much better. I realized that a lot of people are going to read into that, and New Orleans Football, Nick Underhill's site, threw out a statistic, when talking about Penning's struggles in the run. That this year the Saints have run 83 times to the right side and 49 to the left. Folks, I wouldn't read a whole lot into that because the New Orleans Saints under Sean Payton have almost always been what I call a right-handed offense. They like to run on the right side, but they like to throw their screens and checkdowns over to the left side. So again, I mean, stay tuned for that coming forward. And I hate to be the damp rag on this parade, of what was an impressive victory. Again, the backfield, the passing game, I still have massive concerns about. I know we'll get into that the concerns in a minute, but the running back duo of Kamara and Kendre Miller, if the line can win their assignments up front, this looks like it's going to be a real tough duo for opponents to contend with.
Well, and let's not forget, at some point, you're going to get Jamal Williams back as well. You have a nice little three-headed monster there. And that's what we've said. And I hate to pat ourselves on the back, Bob. That's one of the things you and I hate doing, right? We don't
right.
like do that. No, we never do that. Weren't we the ones talking about that way back on draft day when we said the great thing about this trio is going to be Jamal does something different than the other two. Kamara does something different than the other two. And Miller does something different than the other two. None of them really, there's no conflict there because they all bring something different to the table, right? Like one of them is going to bring the sweet potato casserole. One of them is going to bring the collard greens. One of them is going to bring the apple pie. Like you're not sitting there like, oh man, this is awkward. We both brought pumpkin pie to Thanksgiving dinner. They all bring something different and unique, and they raise the standard. And that's what's going to be great when they actually get to play with all three of them.
Yeah.
Because you can use them as little chess pieces and move them around. And I mean, I would move them around. I can't say Pete Carmichael's going to move them around.
There we go. Beat me to it.
I would move them around and do things like that. So, yeah, promise. Lots of promise there. And again, to pat Bob on the back too over there. Bob did say, and in the pre-draft process, and this is almost verbatim without having to look anything up, was Kendre Miller did not receive a lot of opportunities to catch the ball out of the backfield with his role at TCU. However, in the short moments that he did, he's shown the ability to be a good, if not, well, I'd say above average to good receiving back at the NFL level. Bob said that since before the Saints drafted him. And I think especially this week, I know one of them went for like 30 yards, but I think this past week he certainly showed that. 4 catches, 53 yards with a long of 33. He caught all 4 of his targets. So I think Kendre definitely proved that this week. Let's talk about the passing game just a little bit. And I want to start dramatic, Bob. I'm a theater minor. Some of you don't even know that, but I minored in theatrical arts. I thought it was good for my voice and projecting while I was on the air back in the day calling college football. But let's be dramatic. Is it fair to say that Derek Carr has not lived up to expectations to this point? Because he has another game in Foxborough where he throws for under 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, that's just solely looking at stats. Or, we analyze the game for a reason because numbers do lie. I hate that. That's one of my least favorite phrases of all time is numbers don't lie because they do. If you watch the tape, sometimes they do.
They can. Yeah.
So with that, do you feel he's underachieved in his first 5 games as a starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints?
Underachieved and performed below expectations are, in my opinion, an apples and oranges phrase. Has he underachieved? No, I don't think so. Although there are a couple games where I've watched a lot of Derek Carr. There are a couple of games where I really think he needs to get the ball out quicker, and improve his accuracy. But generally speaking, I personally don't think he's underachieved. I do think he has not lived up to the expectations of most of the fan base. A lot of the fan base expected this to be a Drew Brees type of productive and efficient offense. And there were some of us, Brandon, I think you were one of them, and I know I was one of them, cautioning people, saying, look, it might take half a season or 6 weeks for Derek Carr to really get a feel for the players around him and the system he's now in. I am a little bit more than a little bit concerned about the passing numbers. Since the Saints sit at 24th or 25th right now in passing production, but it goes worse than that. Everybody knows the issues they've had with pass protection. But beyond that, Derek threw for over 300 yards in the season opener against Tennessee. Since then, he has only averaged 160 yards passing per game. Now, I realize he missed a whole quarter against Green Bay, but those are still not good numbers. Those are the numbers of an underachiever. Especially when you have guys like Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and now Alvin Kamara, to throw to. You got to have better numbers than that. I know that Dennis Allen seems insistent that he wants his offense. Whether Pete Carmichael wants this or not, I don't know. But the head coach is always going to win. Those head-to-head conflicts, or if there's a conflict. Dennis Allen obviously wants a conservative ball control style of offense. So that was my first indicator. As long as where I said to people, as long as Dennis Allen is the coach, it doesn't matter whether Derek Carr is the next Drew Brees. We're never going to see those type of numbers in this offense with the Dennis Allen team. But still, I need to see better than 100, a hell of a lot better than 160 yards per game when you have 4 weapons like I just mentioned.
Well, and the amount of money you're paying him too. I think that does play into the answer. If you were to ask 10 people, if you were to Family Feud it and say, we surveyed 100 people, and I think the money thing definitely has to tie into the answer. It'd be one thing if we're talking about a rookie quarterback or a guy like Jameis Winston who's coming back on a very, very team-friendly deal. It's another thing when you ask, well, is he underperforming? Is he not living up to the expectations? When you pay a guy $150 million.
And we were told that by the powers that be, and on Airline Drive, that this is the quarterback that we wanted for our system. This is the perfect quarterback for the offense that we want to run. Not at 160 yards per game, it isn't.
No, and no quarterback at 160 yards per game. I mean, let's be honest, Bob. You have, I don't even know off the top of my head. I'm going to look it up, though, just because. So, guys, bear with me. My question is, and this is not me coming unprepared, this is me and my brain working in a very unique way, is the question, is Bryce Young averaging more yards per game right now than Derek Carr? That's what I'm looking up, because being here in the Carolinas, I hear it all the time.
Sure.
They are very unhappy right now.
Yeah.
With Bryce Young at quarterback. And some fans logically go, you know what? We don't have an offensive line. You know what? There's not a team around him. You know what? This, that, and the other. But when you have a total QBR of 32, a total QBR of 28.6, which is 32nd in the league, you're not really doing yourself any favors.
No.
He's thrown for 750 yards this year. So that is an average of what? 750. I got to pull out a calculator. And that's an even number. That's not even good.
I tell you, Carr's thrown for
150.
Carr's thrown for 946 total so far.
But the fact that I even have to sit there and think, you know what, this might be a possibility, is a little bit of a problem. I think the high price tag has a lot to do with it. I think the connection with Dennis Allen has a lot to do with where people's expectations were. And listen, I think too, and this isn't Derek's fault by any means. It happens every offseason in every sport. You have the top tier free agents. You have the best available at their position. And Derek Carr was far and away the best available quarterback in free agency this year. And when you have that type of title, the expectations come with that.
Mhm.
Is it all on Derek Carr? Absolutely not, because
No.
that offensive line is, awful. Because I just talked about the Panthers and how bad their offensive line is, I'm going to share a meme with you guys without showing you a meme. So this may go terribly. In Toy Story 4, for those of you who have small children like Bob, who've probably seen Toy Story 4,
Mhm.
Woody's carrying Forky, which is, like a spork with eyes and arms and legs. And Forky looks at him and says, "You know what? You're just like me. Trash." And that's the conversation the Saints and Panthers offensive line is having right now, because they're both trash. They're terrible. But the offensive line's been really bad. You want to talk about a positional group that has underachieved and has not lived up to expectations that apparently, according to Bob, two completely different subjects. They've done both. They've been really bad. What I will put on Derek Carr is, the game that the AC sprain may be causing issues. If you know it's causing issues, don't play. I think we're beyond that excuse at this point.
Yeah.
Now that he's played 2 games. Some of it's play calling.
A
But
lot
again,
of it is.
I think when you have that type of price tag and you are deemed you don't want to say savior, but finally the Saints have the heir apparent to Drew Brees after this catastrophe of 6 different starting quarterbacks in 2 years. I think the criticism is extremely fair.
Brendan, Derek Carr had 8 incompletions on Sunday against New England. 5 of those incompletions, and this is one of the few weeks that I rewatched a game film for a second time, just to make sure that I wanted to, that my eyes didn't deceive me. But on 5 of those 8 incompletions, the Patriots were a defensive backfield was either able to make a play or force an incompletion, because there were three New Orleans receivers all in the same vicinity.
That's happened a lot this year.
It has a ton. It almost makes me want to torture myself and go back and watch 2020 film and 2021 and 2022 film to see how often it happened.
Yeah, don't do that to yourself.
I don't dislike myself that much.
You don't deserve it.
But yeah, the spacing for these receivers continues to be an issue, and when it's happening with more than just 1 or 2 guys, and it's happening with guys who know this system. So that tells me that this is the play design. This is not multiple receivers running the wrong route, over and over again. This is play design and game planning. Which again, I have, even after a 34-0 victory, I still have an issue with.
Well, rightfully so. It makes, and I'm glad you brought up the point that at that point it's not on the players, it's the play design and the play calling, because it makes your team look dumb. Like it just does. Because sitting and watching it live, whether you're watching it on TV, from the press box, from the stands, wherever you may be, you watch it live and you're like, how the hell do you do that? That when you watch it live the first time, and it's the first time it happens in a game, you're like, why are Olave and Thomas in the same area? Like within 5 yards of each other. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Enough where a player in zone coverage who has good instincts and good awareness
can cover 2 people.
Can essentially cover 2 guys at the same time. That's bad play calling.
Exactly. And there are passes for things like that. And a lot of you know this, but for some of you that are more of the casual watchers, when a play breaks down and a quarterback scrambles and receivers are told, find your quarterback's eyes, come back to the quarterback. Yeah, you're going to have guys be in the same area. That makes sense because you're just improvising at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You're just trying to become open. But when you have a 3-step drop and you look and you're going, well, why are they in the same vicinity? So, to Bob's point, you watch the tape back and you go, okay, well, maybe the defensive back got their hands on him, was able to force him one way and, do this to the route. And you go, no, that didn't happen. They had a clean break. What the heck's going on? And again, it is something that has happened more this year than any year I remember covering this team. And you have competent receivers, right? Bob and I talk about it every week. You have Olave, Thomas, and Shaheed. And then after that, you kind of can throw anybody's name in there that's on the roster. But we've seen a lot of Keith Kirkwood this year, being receiver 4, who is not a rookie, is a veteran at this point in his NFL career. He's been in the league since 18. And you're like, okay, well, these guys are competent guys that know the system.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on? You have to immediately go and look at Pete Carmichael again. Not as mad at Pete Carmichael this week as I was last week.
Right.
Winning fixes a lot of problems.
Right.
Scoring points fixes a lot of problems I may have there. But again, and I'll go back to that reference I made earlier again, the car started, but it clearly still has problems. And I realize how much funnier that is because Derek Carr, and I keep making a car reference, not intentional at all.
I like it.
I didn't mean to, but I love it. Go me. But you're driving down. It starts. Thank God you're driving to work, but the check engine light's still on. The back right tire just feels like bad. Like it's not flat, but the alignment's really screwed up, and you can really feel it. But it gets you to where you need to go. Like that's where we are with the offense. We went from a team last week that was, the car's not even starting to, okay, like we're making progress. And that's why I said, here at the bottom, like looking to continue momentum, in the, if you're watching from YouTube and you saw the header, it's like, yeah, like they're progressing kind of. What's your biggest concern still with this offense moving forward? I think clearly, we haven't even talked about the offensive line. So before we get to that question and then talk about the defense, let's talk about the offensive line issues. And you kind of talked about Trevor Penning a little bit, and I think that's an interesting development if he ends up getting benched.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really shows you how raw of a talent he was coming into the draft, and how there was a lot of emphasis for him to start, and how maybe the injury set him back. Maybe the emphasis of getting him to be a starter set him back a little bit. And we've seen not even peaks, but for the sake of for the example, we've seen peaks and valleys. We've seen weeks where he's grown, and then we've seen other weeks where he's flat on his ass again.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of Trevor Penning specifically, I said, looking at the tape, I thought it was the best week the offensive line had start to finish. 1, do you agree? 2, where are you at with that?
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that assessment. Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz are finally looking like Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz from last year. Ryan Ramczyk, I don't think that knee of Ramczyk's is ever going to allow him to be an elite tackle again, the elite of the elite. But he is playing well above average. Right now, above average to good range, both in pass protection and especially in run blocking. This past game. So yeah, I'll agree that as a whole, especially in pass protection, as a unit, the New Orleans probably played their best game of the year against New England. I am still concerned. I know a lot of people are focused on Trevor Penning and his struggles, and I get that. And I'm becoming a little bit concerned too. But remember, this is the kid has started exactly. He's still a rookie. He has started 7 NFL games. 6. I take that back. 6. He started the season finale last year and the first 5 this year. He's only played in 13 games because of that Liz Frank and that foot injury last year. No, my bigger concern is on the interior of the Saints line. And I just mentioned that McCoy and Ruiz are playing better, and they are. But the shuffling that this team has had to do, because Ruiz missed time, Pete has missed time, Hurst has missed time, so they've had to shuffle both of those guard positions. Yeah, and it's affected the continuity, but in pass protection, even when they have had the unit out there that they want to have out there, the coaches, all the both guards and even McCoy still massively struggle against these inside twists and inside stunts that our opponents are throwing at them. And I don't just mean struggle to contain it. I mean, guys are getting 300-pound guys are getting free reins to Carr when he drops back to pass, or Kamara when he gets a handoff. This is a huge concern for me right now. And again, obviously the players have to execute. You know my philosophy on that, Brendan. But it's coaching. Doug Marrone, not only an experienced NFL line coach, a well-respected NFL line coach. He needs to go back to the film room with his guys and say, okay, we keep getting beat on this scheme. We need to fix that on our end. Eric McCoy or whoever's making the line calls, you need to identify, when it's identifiable, you need to identify this and shift protection schemes. You guys need to do, you guards and McCoy, you need to do a better job of identifying who's going to need help, and get there for the help a lot faster than you're doing. Because and this is the issue that I'm seeing. I'm seeing McCoy or one of the guards, they'll slide to a spot, either to help ram check or penning on the outside when they don't really need it, and that's leaving a gap as wide as so wide you could drive a Ryder truck through. We've seen Carr get hurt on that kind of play already.
Yeah, and I think the other concerning thing is, and you're right, there's injuries, and I see some of you guys in the comments that want us to talk about the tight ends and Derek Carr. We'll definitely get to that. But even with the injuries, a lot of playing the offensive line, particularly the interior of the offensive line, communication is obviously a big thing, and continuity and chemistry and understanding tendencies, especially if you're Eric McCoy and you're playing center. You have to know on your right, whether it's Cesar Ruiz or whoever's filling in, you have to know their tendencies. You have to have chemistry and you have to have great communication. And same with the left, whether it's Andrus Pete, whether it's James Hurst, whoever's playing that spot. So when you do have stunts and you have different things in front of you, you know who's passing off where. And you may give a pass to an interior of an offensive line that's young, that hasn't worked together a whole lot. That's not the case here. Like, all of these guys have played together. All of these guys have been a part of an offensive line that at some point in time was considered one of the best, if not the best, in football. Mm-hmm. And, for some of you that might be wondering, well, how does a new quarterback, does that affect? It's like, no. You're still this, especially when stuff like that happens, yeah, it might change your pre-snap calls, but once you're going, Eric McCoy is still the voice of the offensive line and is still very literally the middle and the glue that holds the whole line together. So once the play goes and once that snaps off, it's completely on, I don't want to say completely, but it is McCoy's job then to go, okay, this is coming, this stunt's coming.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch here. We're going to do this or we're going to do that. And it's also the jobs in practice to simulate that and understand that. So a lot of it's coaching. A lot of it's breaking down film with the coaching staff and going, okay, guys, here on this play, Tampa Bay likes to do this with their nose tackle, right? And depending if they're, whether it's a nose tackle or, a three technique or, all the big things that go into that, every defense is different. And all stunts are going to look different.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like in Madden where everything looks the exact same regardless of what defensive unit you're playing. Things are going to look different. Is that stunt coming from defensive end to defensive tackle? Is this coming as like a delayed blitz type of stunt move? Like, what's going on? A lot of that goes back on coaching, but I'm also going to put some of the blame on Eric McCoy, who, a lot of people regard as one of the better young centers in football. And at this point, I don't even know if you can say young center in football.
Right.
He's getting up there, right? And you go, this should not be happening with a unit that's been together, a unit that understands, a unit that should have the chemistry and the communication to block. We're not talking about complex stunts either. Like, very simple. Like, I ran these things in middle school type of stunts. Like, I was playing center in middle school because I was, a big dude back then. And I could identify those things as a 6th and 7th grader. So how can a guy making $50 million over the course of however many years not be able to comprehend and communicate that, right? That's my frustrations with the offensive line. Yes, Ramchek's taken a step back, but I don't want to say it's to be expected, but he had his 5 years of dominance as the best tackle in football. You can't continue that forever. You have your frustrations and your concerns about penning. To Bob's point, this is like redshirt freshman year, redshirt rookie year for Trevor Penning. And he was way behind the 8 ball because of the injury at the beginning of his true rookie season. I want to give him some grace. And I want to give him grace because I have seen games where he's looked a lot better.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a lot of pressure on him to perform right now. And he needs time. Very raw prospect. Go back and watch some of the things Bob and I were talking about during that draft process. We both really liked him. We thought he was going to be a mauler, but he was raw. And he went to a smaller school. And I advocate for drafting from smaller schools.
Sure.
That means you're just not going up against the same type of body mass and speed that these NFL edge rushers have. Right? So anyway, let's talk about what some of these people have been saying in here about Derek Carr and the tight ends. So we'll start here. All off season, heard about how Carr loved his tight ends and had such a great connection. We don't use them in the passing game. Playing devil's advocate, Bob. All of them but Jimmy. Jimmy hasn't missed time yet. 2 of the 3 have missed time. I think that has something to do with it. I think chemistry. I think when you talk about growing into a new offense, and some people aren't going to agree with me here, and some people aren't going to want to hear it, but it does take time. I don't care that he's played for Dennis Allen before. I don't care that he's really familiar with a lot of these players or a lot of this staff. If you go back and watch old interviews, talk about Pete Carmichael and Sean Payton's offense. I know Sean's not here anymore, but a lot of former players said it was one of the hardest to grasp because of how big the playbook was and the terminology. Even for a veteran quarterback, it's going to take time. And even more so when your weapons aren't healthy.
Yeah.
Because Derek Carr's missed Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, just a tight end. We talked about the running back injuries. We've talked about the offensive line injuries. Receiver might be the only position where they've been pretty good, knock on wood. Yeah, they got to. I do think that has some of it. We'll continue on the Derek Carr train. The way Carr's been performing, was the Raiders benching warranted, or is he going through a learning curve? I think it's a learning curve, Bob. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. It's more the latter. The Raiders benched Carr because at the end of last year, because Josh McDouchebag is an idiot. B, the Raiders are one of, if not the most dysfunctional organizations in all of professional sports. And C, they had already made up their mind by that point in the season, that they were going to move on from Derek Carr. They were hoping to trade Carr, so why get him hurt in the last 2 games of a meaningless season when you're going nowhere? So yeah, I do still have high belief in Derek Carr. I do like him for this system when it's running fine, when it's functioning properly. There's a clear learning curve right now.
Red Dog continues and said, "Is Carr a one-trick pony?"
No.
or is the play calling? Because every Sunday I see Carr holding the ball, looking for the deep shot. I'm gonna counter that too and say holding the ball isn't always looking for the deep shot. In all honesty, and Bob and I already alluded to it. The play calling, if we can see on TV and go, why the hell are two guys in the same vicinity of each other? Imagine playing quarterback, going through your progressions and going, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like progression 2 and 3 should not be within 6 inches of each other. So to an extent, I think that's part of it too. But I understand the frustrations, and I don't remember where it was, and I'd have to scroll a little bit further back to earlier. But one of you did throw in the comments, Carr holding the ball, very similar to the complaints about Jameis Winston holding the ball.
Yep.
And one of the reasons Jameis got benched last year after the injury. And it's like, I understand. I understand the frustrations there because you can't have it one way for one person and one way for the next.
Right.
And if you had siblings at home, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you'd always feel like little Johnny always got the better end of the deal. Like Johnny didn't get in trouble for doing this, but I did. Bob's smirking because he was always the one getting in trouble for everything.
Always.
All right. Just saying. I did too, though. Maybe not everything, but I did.
Yeah.
Too.
Listen, there were times, and the Carolina game, is what really irritated me. Watching Derek Carr, there were a lot of times, even in the Panthers game alone, that Derek passed up a deeper receiver, Olave and Shaheed in both in all cases. I counted them 5 times in that game. Carr passed up a deeper receiver that was open in order to throw to a shorter guy, a shorter route, and held on to the ball too long. And it's not the first time that I've seen it. That's just the Carolina game were the most egregious examples. But I saw a couple instances like that against Tampa Bay as well. Tampa Bay, I just thought to myself, okay, he's dealing with the shoulder, along with the extra padding. He doesn't have confidence in his downfield arm. But that kind of goes in line with the concerns that you folks have about tight ends too. And Brendan is right. Foster Moreau has missed time. Now Juwan Johnson has missed time and probably is not going to play again this week. But the Saints offense has made up their mind. The Saints passing attack has made up their mind that they want to attack defenses with their trio of receivers. And as long as knock on wood, as long as Olave, Thomas, and Shaheed stay healthy, it's hard to argue with that approach because they're all three. Well, 2 of the 3. Somebody has to remind Pete Carmichael that Rashid Shaheed is still on this team. But it's hard to argue with the logic when you have that kind of talent. Does Derek have to do a better job of identifying his targets faster, getting the ball out of his hands faster? Yeah, he does. But I think that also comes with a certain level of comfort with the offense and with the players you're playing around.
Right, and I'm with you, especially that Carolina game in week 2. The unwillingness to pull the trigger, which catastrophically different from, and we'll use Jameis as an example just because that was the example I just used, catastrophic differences between 2 guys. One guy, it's like, oh, there's half an inch of a window here, laser.
Yeah.
And then you get to Derek Carr and you're like, why are you waiting? Because even with Andy Dalton, and you guys know how I feel about Andy Dalton, I still think he's one of the better backups in the league. Honestly, at this point, he should be starting for Carolina. Don't let Bryce get hurt. But even Andy was pulling the trigger. And some of the times, and honestly, a lot of the times, probably shouldn't have been pulling the trigger. But you do see the hesitation in Derek Carr, and that becomes frustrating. And I think some of it's being comfortable in the offense. I think some of it's just understanding your receivers, which also takes time. And some of it's probably just not having a whole lot of confidence in your offensive line. to let one rip because you don't want to let one rip and keep yourself completely vulnerable to taking a shot, which has happened a handful of times this year. Let's move to the defense just a little bit before we preview Houston, which I think is going to be a really interesting matchup. You guys will get the full rundown tomorrow night on PSF. If you guys want to tune in to that, we're going to change the time just a little bit because the World Tour must continue for Brendan back on the road tomorrow. So we're going to try to work out a time for you guys and communicate that via Twitter and all that good stuff. But the defense, anytime you pitch a shutout, it's really hard to give a grade that's not an A.
Yeah.
Like I said at the very top of this, I think when you're able to set the tone early, and the Patriots offense is abysmal. Mac Jones, wow.
Yeah.
No other words. And especially that first interception. Just, what is he doing? Like, it looked like it slipped out of his hands, but then you're also like, even if it did,
Granderson hit him, and did alter the throw, but I still don't know where he was aiming.
That's what I was getting at. It was like, where are you throwing the ball? Anyway, Tyrann Mathieu pick six, really good to see that for Tyrann Mathieu, who, you were tuning into this podcast this time last season. Tyrann Mathieu was getting it from us. He's really turned a corner. So really happy it's starting to pay off and look like the signing we all hoped he'd be.
Mm-hmm.
It was really nice to see Granderson get after it. If you guys tuned in to us here with PSF, that was my X factor last week.
Yes, sir.
Need to see him get back to what he did the first 2 weeks, and he certainly did. And it was also nice to see just a healthy secondary for the most part. Obviously missing Marcus May last week for suspension, but for the most part, you saw health and you saw guys flying to the football. You saw plays being made, and that's all you can really ask for out of this Saints defense. And hopefully they carry that into next week against a rookie quarterback that is making people where I live really, really mad right now. But what was your assessments on the Saints shutout victory defensively?
I mean, in a word, stifling. Playmaker making plays, multiple players making multiple plays at all three levels. Exactly what you want from an elite defense. This is a defense that we thought that we thought would come out angry last week against Tampa Bay after their letdown against Green Bay the week before. It took a week, but this looked like an angry defense on Sunday against New England. Granderson, undoubtedly the player of the game. But my X factor coming in was Cam Jordan. Cam had himself a hell of an outing too. Several disruptions of the, not only Mac Jones, but the Patriots running game. Brissy continues to play like a monster. People aren't giving enough credit to Nathan Shepard and Malcolm Roach at how well they're playing inside as well. I loved the move using Tano Passanio, as an inside rusher on obvious passing situations. That's something that we saw earlier in Passanio's Saints career, and it's something that I'd like to see going forward. So I like the imagination from Dennis Allen and Joe Woods. Demario Davis, Pete Werner. I mean, those guys are playing so good that they're almost getting overlooked on a weekly basis because they're just. Their level of excellence has come to be expected. We thought that the Patriots had a couple receivers that might be able to make plays against the Saints secondary. We liked the matchup for New Orleans, but we wondered if New England would be able to make some shorter plays and turn them into bigger gains. Saints secondary did not let that happen, man. Tyrann Mathieu, obviously the pick six, but he made a couple other plays in coverage. Marshawn Lattimore played his probably his best game in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Great to have Paulson Adebo back. Listen, I know Isaac Edom has played terrific football, but he's no Paulson Adebo. Alontae Taylor just looks more and more comfortable with each passing week in that slot position. Both in coverage and as a run defender, he's making a lot of plays. At that line of scrimmage, and Jordan Howard. The Saints are getting Marcus May back this week from suspension, and I don't think a lot of people realize how big an addition his return is. But Jordan Howden really impressed me as well. I think May is still the better defender at this point, better all-around defender, certainly better against the run. But Jordan Howden is making plays in coverage. He was injured 2 weeks ago, and then played with a cast last week, against Tampa Bay, or maybe I got the 2 weeks reversed. I'm not sure. And he's still dealing with that hand wrist injury. But I love this kid's instincts and his eyes. He trusts what he sees, and then he has the athleticism to go make a play. But yeah, I mean, I love the way this defense is playing.
Defense typically wins championships. I'm in no position to say that the Saints are Super Bowl contenders, but in terms of a divisional championship, if the Saints are to do that, I still full-heartedly believe it's going to be because of how strong this defense is, and still has the potential of being a really elite defense in the league this year. Let's talk about it. New Orleans Saints, Week 6. Get to face C.J. Stroud, the number 2 pick of the NFL draft, a guy that I had as the number 1 quarterback in his class. And as I said, people in my area here in the Charlotte area, they're really not happy seeing C.J. have all that success down in Houston. The Texans are actually one of the best teams in the league in terms of passing yards per game. They're third. A dip in rushing yards after what I thought was a really strong rookie campaign from Dameon Pierce. Certainly brought me a lot of fantasy value a year ago, seeing those numbers dip. And then a pretty average defense sitting there right outside the top 10 in multiple categories. This is a Texans team at 2-3 that is still very young, still trying to figure out their own identity. But showing a lot of promise, Bob, as we preview this matchup for New Orleans. What are some concerns that Texans offense gives you? We just talked about how strong the Saints defense is. Can they continue that momentum against C.J. Stroud, who's yet to throw an interception this year?
Yeah, and that's the key. I mean, C.J. Stroud is playing some terrific football. He looks like every bit like a franchise quarterback. That Houston was hoping they were getting with the 2nd overall pick. CJ has thrown 8 touchdowns without an interception. As a matter of fact, he is the new NFL record holder for consecutive passes to start a career without an interception. But I look at Stroud too. He's only completing a little bit over 61% of his throws, and he has a receiving core of Nico Collins, Robert Woods, Tank Dell, and tight end Dalton Schultz. They aren't going to scare a lot of teams. So, obviously going forward, the Texans are going to look to surround Stroud with more weapons, but they can only do with what they have right now. Pass protection, protecting Stroud is going to be at a premium, especially since Houston, ranks 27th in running the football and 30th in yards per carry. So, don't expect that they're going to scrap the running attack, because I agree with you. I think Dameon Pierce is still a good back, and the Texans finally have their full offensive line healthy coming into this week against New Orleans. So they're still going to try to work Dameon Pierce to get him on track. The Saints' key to success is going to be stopping that run and making Houston feel like they have to be one-dimensional. Because Stroud, he's still a rookie quarterback. And while rookies have historically had success against Dennis Allen defenses, the book on beating a rookie quarterback is still get pressure on them, make them feel rushed, make them feel like the game is going 100 miles an hour, and we're going to benefit from the mistakes that that he's bound to make. Now he hasn't made those yet, but the Saints have the type of defensive personnel from front to back that Houston has yet to face offensively. So the Saints have the personnel to finally force Stroud into some mistakes. But the last thing you want to do is let this young offense get confidence, and get a little bit of a rhythm going, due to balance. So I think actually stopping the run needs to come first and foremost, and then you pressure Stroud and shut down those receivers. Secondly,
Yeah, absolutely. You want to speed them up. That's the best way to beat a young quarterback. Speed them up. I am glad you mentioned though the success rookie quarterbacks have had on Dennis Allen defenses, and you want a specific mold of quarterbacks that have had success against Dennis Allen. It is that mold that CJ Stroud fills. Think about Jalen Hurts a few years ago. Go all the way back to 2011 for RG3. And that's the mold of quarterback, a guy that is not known as a runner, but a guy who has enough athleticism to make you pay with their legs. Stroud certainly a guy that can do that. My biggest thing when you go into a game like this and you're going up against a team that doesn't run the ball particularly well, very similar to what the Saints had last week in New England, I have a little bit more confidence in Dameon Pierce to have a game where he snaps his fingers and he turns it around than I did that combo up in New England.
Yeah.
Yes, stopping the run, super important. And I'm in a total agreement with you there. But the last thing I want to see is the Texans find that balance and see Dameon Pierce get 10 yards there, 8 yards there, 7 yards there, and then open your defense up for CJ Stroud to use his athleticism to his ability or use a very underrated arm strength to push the ball downfield. Because Stroud, go watch his Ohio State tape, I think can make just about every throw in the book. It's going to take time at the NFL level, but he's certainly shown with the stats we threw out earlier, the potential that he has to be a Pro Bowler at this level. So I think for me, I'm with you, Bob. You got to stop the run first, but you cannot allow this team to get balanced in any shape or form. You cannot let CJ Stroud get in a rhythm early either. Because you know what's going to happen. Those first 15, 20 scripted plays, as we like to call them, you're not going to have Stroud looking super deep on play 4 or 5. You're going to have Stroud intermediate and short. Just some give me throws to get him in rhythm. The Saints didn't allow Mac Jones to have that last week. The Saints haven't allowed a lot of quarterbacks in the games they've won to find that. I'd say the only game where a quarterback got comfortable right from the jump was Baker Mayfield against Tampa.
Yeah.
As long as you can avoid that, speed the game up for CJ Stroud. Don't let Dameon Pierce find a rhythm on the ground. I think you're going to be fine. Defensively, though there's no names on that offensive roster that jump off the page and really scare you, I do think this is an underrated team in Houston. And I'm really high on CJ Stroud. I was through the draft process. I'm shocked he went number 2. Let's flip it. New Orleans Saints offensively. We spent a lot of this show talking about the New Orleans Saints offense, how we saw some progress last week, I guess is the best way to put it. Might be small progress, but progress is certainly progress. I said this is a Houston team that's kind of in the middle of the park when it comes to all defensive categories. Where can the Saints win? Where can the Saints succeed this week against Houston?
I mean, first of all, obviously, New Orleans is going to have to keep up the momentum that they established running the football, against New England. The Texans ranked 17th, middle of the pack, against the run, but they've been vulnerable the last couple of weeks. I think the Saints can have some real success throwing the football against the Houston Texans. And first of all, you want your running game to set you up on second and short, third and medium. Basically, do not get behind the sticks. Houston has struggled, against teams that have been able to do that. The Texans ranked 28th on third down defenses, and they have allowed 72.4% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. Now, their starting cornerback duo, Steven Nelson and Shaq Griffin, they're both physical guys, but they're not real athletic. So I don't look for Houston to play a lot of man coverage because they simply cannot match up, with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed athletically. And as physical and Nelson and Griffin are, they're not going to be able to match up with Michael Thomas physically. So you talk about getting Stroud into a rhythm, or not wanting Stroud to get into a rhythm with short and intermediate throws. This is where Derek Carr can get into a rhythm against what I expect to be an off. A Texans coverage is going to play off the ball, and allow Shaq Griffin, Steven Nelson to make plays on the ball. Their safety duo I love, Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward. We know that they are both highly instinctive players. So we talked about a little bit of concerns with Carr's accuracy earlier. He's going to have to be dead on, while he gets into that rhythm. Houston, they have some athletes in that front seven and along their defensive line and linebacking core, but they're lighter athletes. So look for the Saints to run Kamara right at them. Look for the Saints to try to establish a physical advantage on the offensive line, and again, do not be surprised if New Orleans again often keeps an extra blocker, be it a lineman or an extra tight end, in for max pass protect. Because you don't want Will Anderson, the third overall pick. Jerry Hughes, Jonathan Greenard, Christian Harris. Again, all those guys are highly athletic, but a little bit undersized. So you want to put beef in front of them to get Carr, that extra half second it's going to take for hopefully proper spacing in the Saints receivers to find open spots in those zone and off-ball coverages.
I'm going to take it a step further when you talked about Alvin Kamara. I think this could be a really big game for Kendre Miller. We saw a little bit of a breakout, right? If you want to call it that, about 80 total scrimmage yards, maybe a little bit more than that for Kendre last week. I'm going to go out on a limb as we talk about X factors and close out the show. My X factor is going to be Kendre Miller. I think he's going to have opportunities as the change of pace back, if you want to call it that. And I think he's going to get his first NFL touchdown this week. I think he's due. I think the confidence that he must be feeling after a strong week last week, Alvin Kamara speaking very highly of him to the media. In a game like this where, like you said, yes, it's a very strong athletic front seven, but might be missing a little bit of the beefiness. Kendre Miller proved at TCU he can run between the tackles hard. And he has that unique burst, maybe not that one-of-a-kind burst through the line like Alvin Kamara, but he's got a unique burst once he gets about a step or two across the line of scrimmage. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of him. He's going to get his opportunities, and it's going to go extremely well. Defensively, he's had a really good year this year. But he hasn't had that breakout game, right? It's been climbing with Brian Brisset, but he hasn't had that breakout type of week. So I'm taking two rookies as my X factors this week. How about that? I think Brisset is going to have a say, and I think a lot of it's going to be in the run, just because of the athletic nature of CJ Stroud. But I think Brisset finally has a little bit of a breakout week for the New Orleans Saints. He's played extremely well. Like I said, he's progressed every week, but he hasn't had that big bang moment yet. And I think he finally gets it against the Houston Texans.
Rookie on rookie. I like that matchup. One rookie first round pick sacking another, maybe a strip sack for a big turnover, momentum changing turnover. I'm going to stay. Yeah, my defensive X factor. I'm going to stay at the same position, but I'm going to go with Nathan Shepard. I mentioned him earlier in the week. He's playing really, really well against the run. He's getting some understated pressures, and the Texans have two very good tackles. I still expect Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson to make some plays, but what's going to help them create one-on-one opportunities blocking wise is going to be the success of the defensive tackles per se. Malcolm Roach, Nate Shepard, even Colin Saunders. I love the way this whole group has been playing. They're playing better and better week by week collectively. So I do agree with you that I think a difference maker comes on the interior of the New Orleans defense, not only as pass rushers, but you got Dameon Pierce is a cutback runner, and he's athletic enough to get outside, but he always has his eye on a cutback opportunity. A lot like Alvin, or he runs a lot like Alvin Kamara, less athletic though. That's something where these defensive tackles, they're going to they need to clog up those holes and get interior penetration, force him to bounce it outside where Demario Davis, Pete Werner can run him down. Offensively, first, I'd like to needle Chris Olave a little bit. Chris played a better game, but he's a very good good to very good receiver. To be a great receiver, he's got to come up with those plays that we have narrowly seen him miss against Green Bay, against Carolina, and last week against the New England Patriots. So Chris Olave, you're a key part of this offense. You need to take that one more step. But the X factor for me is a guy named Rashid Shaheed. Pete Carmichael, remember him? He still plays for the New Orleans Saints. Rashid has gotten 6 offensive touches in the last 3 weeks combined. Now he's been targeted. Yeah, right. He's been targeted, I think 7 or 8 times total, in the passing game. You got to get him more involved. And again, we're talking about a Houston secondary that's aggressive and physical, but limited athletically. They know that Carr has established a very strong chemistry with Michael Thomas. They know that Olave is going to get most of the targets in the Saints offense. This is going to allow, in my opinion, Rashid Shaheed to have a couple of big moments. It might not be on deep shots either, folks. It might be, Shaheed, I said it over and over again. Shaheed is a very underrated route runner. He is smart enough and intelligent enough to find the spots inside a Houston, a zone defense, and if Carr can get him the ball on the run, we know that he is a deadly open field runner. So I expect some big moments from Rashid Shaheed this Sunday against the Houston Texans.
Well, there you have it, guys. Bob, what is your final score prediction? We talked about our X factors, but if you have a final score prediction, it's still early in the week. You can say, Brendan, I don't even want to do that. Let's save that for later in the week. But if you have a final score prediction or something in the realm of it, what is it?
Now, you know what? As long I do reserve the right to change it since we do have a couple days before game day. But I like the Saints matchup in this one. It concerns me. I love the way Houston is building their team. I hope that the Saints the Saints need to come out very aggressively and prevent the Texans from getting any momentum, because the worst thing you could do against a young team is let them stay in the game and build momentum, because you'll have your hands full in the fourth quarter. I love the chip that the New Orleans played on with their chip on their shoulder last week against New England. I think they come out again on both sides of the ball, with that same kind of physical mentality again. And I like New Orleans in this one. I'm going to go 27-17 Saints.
We're on the same page. We are really on the same page. I had the Saints 24-17 in this one, which I'm still iffy on this offense, even scoring 20 points, but got to remain a little bit hopeful after what we saw last week. Libby, I see your comment. Football's in the mail. Sent your tracking number. You should be getting that. I sent it today, so you should definitely see it Monday at the absolute latest.
We want pictures, Libby.
Yeah, please do. And I threw something a little extra in there because you had to wait for it.
Nice.
Because of my world tour. Um, that's all. That's the only comment I have on that. Bob knows what I'm talking about. As we close up the show, Bob, for the people that don't follow you on the World Wide Web, which they're crazy if they don't, because, and I'll say it for the second straight week, brilliant writing, brilliant analysis from Bob week in and week out. So if you want to dive in during your lunch break or after you get home and you want to read a good long article on how the Saints passing attack can take advantage of the passing defense of the Houston Texans, you know exactly where to find it through Bob Rose. Bob, where can people find that stuff and follow you on Twitter, where you may or may not have some angry rants now and then?
Folks, first of all, thank you for tuning in with Brendan and I on a special night of your Bayou Blitz podcast. And make sure you follow the Bayou Blitz Facebook group and the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. You guys have done a fantastic job of promoting that, especially on the Facebook side. Please continue to do so. We love you for it. You have been so great. You have made this your show, just like we hoped that you would, and we're just honored to be a part of it. You can follow me personally, Bob Rose, ROSE, over on Facebook, at Bobby R2613 on Twitter. And obviously, I do post all of my articles on my personal pages, but please follow myself, John Hendricks, Kyle Mosley, Ross Jackson, all of us at the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter, or the SI.com team page for the New Orleans Saints.
And for me, you can follow me on just about everything at BT Boylan. Make sure you download the PSF app if you haven't already. Give Bob and I a follow. We'll be hitting you guys with a preview tomorrow at some time, and then as well as a pregame and postgame show on Sunday. Well, folks, we appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode of the Bayou Blitz. A happy Wednesday on a Thursday edition. We're getting a little too comfortable doing that, but it's our show. We can do what we want, right? Like I said, we will see you guys through the PSF app tomorrow for a more preview of the Saints and Texans, and you can follow along there as well for our pregame and postgame shows. Until then, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you guys when we do more Saints coverage coming to you shortly. See you then.